Hi, r/guitarpedals. This is Grrnoise with my first ever rig rundown for fall 2020. Instead of doing my big full rig that I have in the band practice space, which I have not even been to in 3 weeks now, I'm just going to do the home rig that I recently put together and I'm really happy with, even though it's small and simple. So this is an ampless rig built around what else? The HX Stomp. Starts with the Keeley Loomer, the Shoegaze in a box, My Bloody Valentine in a box pedal. At least that's how it's marketed. I actually don't think that's where its strength lies, although you can definitely get those tones from it. So it's basically a muff with some different EQ options. On a little switch here, I usually use the scooped version of that. And then there's some early 90s inspired, mostly reverb options or reverb similar options. I usually use the focus mode, which is actually modeled off something from that Yamaha multi-effects that shoegazers supposedly used a lot. But it's kind of sounds like a reverb, but it's actually 4 digital delays cascaded into a chorus. Most of the time I run that into the muff if I have the muff on, but this is the version of the Loomer that has the little switch that lets you change the order. I've got a Analog Endeavor's 2-button foot switch for the HX Stomp. Source Audio Nemesis, which I actually randomly got in a trade on our Let's Trade pedals. Really had no plans to hold on to it for a long time or thought that I would think that I would love it or whatever, because I usually am opposed to big complex digital delays that don't have a looper in them. That was what I always saw as the weakness of the Nemesis. And it's still, if there is a weakness, that's the only one, is that it doesn't do looping. It was like I think I actually traded my old HX Stomp for this and a Mercury 7. I believe that was the trade, and I don't remember who it was with. I'll credit that person in the comments, but I sold or traded the Mercury 7 and actually was surprised how much I love the Nemesis. Part of the reason I always love Source Audio stuff is their digital PC or Mac, or their computer interface, their software interface is what I'm trying to say, is really great. It's easy to use, and the big thing that really sets it apart is you can connect to their website and you can try presets either that they've made or that other users have made without even downloading them to the pedal. You just go to the part of the software where that's connected to the site. Again, I'm forgetting the technical names, but that doesn't really matter. And you just click on one and you're instantly trying it in the pedal if you have it plugged in. A lot of the presets that I use have loaded on here. Some of them, at least, I got that way. Like there's a kind of an imitation of a El Capistan, the Strymon, very popular tape modeling delay pedal. That sounds really good. That's one that I got through that method. It's stereo ins and outs. I have it running in the effects loop of the HX Stomp. That's another reason I love it. It also has lots of options for control input via other switches or expression pedals or MIDI or whatever else. I'm not currently really using any of that. Usually the tap tempo and just having the ability to cycle through presets is enough for me. Although sometimes I will, if I have this on a bigger board, I'll use an external foot switch just to cycle through presets, especially if I haven't yet used this one for a live rig, because I got it after the pandemic started and we have not, understandably played live since then. But if I use it in that situation, I may get a foot switch for that, although usually I'm always switching presets between songs and I don't have any trouble. It's okay with me to just like bend over and just hit the select button on here to change presets. The HX Stomp, I'm sure if you care anything about it, you know plenty about it already. The way that I have it set up right now is using kind of a JCM, I think it's a 900 or something like that, amp emulation. Going into that, I have the Rat distortion module on here. I love Rats, and I actually am pretty happy with the emulation of the Rat in the Helix series. Most of the overdrive, distortion, fuzz emulation on the HX Stomp and the Helix series I feel like is really good, except for the muff, which is why I have to have a separate pedal for that. And then I have I think next is the effects loop with just the Nemesis right now, a panning trim that I use sometimes, and then the Ganymede reverb is usually the one I use. It's kind of a modulated deep hall. I don't use a ton of modulation, but it kind of gives me just enough. I actually really like that reverb. A lot of people kind of dig on, especially like shoegaze and ambient guitarists who really value quality reverbs, kind of dig on the not dig, that's not the right word. They criticize the reverbs available on the Helix and HX series, but I actually really like that Ganymede and like the double tank. But I'm not one of those people that has to have, a big sky or something, which obviously reverbs like that sound fantastic, but to me the only time you can really tell the difference is when you're demoing those pedals and A/Bing them, and nobody else really cares, and it's good enough for me. I have a ton of other pedals and stuff that, again, they're mostly in the practice space, but this rig actually does a lot. So I'm going to just give you guys some examples of those sounds that I was talking about real quick. Okay, so just the clean tone. This was with the Ganymede reverb on. I pretty much have that on all the time, just to hear it without. Okay, so the muff side of the Loomer. So the reverb side with on the focus. Combine those two. So the Nemesis, my default that I start with, is a digital delay with kind of a flange on it, which I think works well for a kind of slow dive, shoegazy, or modernized version of that tone. Turn up the mix just so you can hear the actual delay a little more. With some dry. sometimes on the Stomp, the filter and overall gain, stuff like that. I have a looper set up on here to... I did want to talk a little bit about negatives, things I don't like about this rig. Obviously, I could make it a little bit bigger. If I did that, I would add like a mini tube screamer before the muff and a separate looper, because I do not like using the looper on the Stomp. I feel like the switches aren't super responsive, especially for stopping, and I don't like how from the M series, especially at least with the HX Stomp, you know, the looper has to be a separate entry, and you only get 6 in the chain. The effects loop for the Nemesis also has to be a separate entry in the chain, and that's a definite limitation for the HX Stomp. If you're planning to use those two things, well, then you've only got 4 slots left. Of course, the memory is limited anyways, but just some drawbacks for that. But those are the two things I would love to add to this. Maybe get a slightly bigger board and add those two things at some point. Anyways, oh, and the panning. I usually don't use that by itself. I usually use the delay and reverb and something else in tandem with it, because I don't normally want that really choppy sound for what I'm doing with this rig, at least. I want it to be more of a subtle kind of psychedelic feeling in the background. So yeah, that's basically it. That's everything. I will show just a couple of kind of the cooler presets I have saved on the Nemesis. You can hear a bit of a glitch there in the trails. That's actually one of the like hidden modes that you have to use the software to get to. And then this preset uses the Helix mode on the Nemesis. So some warbly, pitch bendy stuff happening in the repeats there. One other kind of different mode I've got on here is sort of an octave effect. It's kind of an octave down thing. That is, thanks for checking out my rundown, guys. Hope you enjoyed it.